Has this happened to you? You try and you try, but you just can't get your model to work. It's so frustrating. Well, Ken's here with his how-to to make you a pro in no time. Hello, Ken Spriggs here with a spiffy new intro to my how-to series. Coming to you with a new episode and working on a suggestion from a viewer, Steve Gowin, to show how I work with styrene and cut it and that sort of thing. So this video is going to be a little bit longer. It's about 20 minutes. I know I said I'd stick to about 10, and for most of them I'll try to do that, but it's harder with some more detailed things such as this. So this one's clocking in about 20 minutes. So let's get to it. All right, so I'm going to be creating a section for this part right here for my Borg Discovery. And I'm going to be raising up this section and replacing that engine nozzle with something a little cooler. And the nozzle itself is going to be kit bashed from a Bandai Star Wars kit, the Resistance Vehicle set. I only really wanted the Millennium Falcon. These other two I can use for parts. So I'm using an engine part from Poe's boosted Starfighter right there, that engine part. And I cut out another one and I have them glued together to be the nozzle. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so I'm working on this section right here. And so the easiest way to get a shape of a pattern that you want is to use some tape, and I just use some Tamiya masking tape. It's pretty thin, pliable. I taped it down. I had to use two pieces. And I first of all traced around the edge with this pencil here. And then I used my X-Acto knife, to cut around it and also to cut out this hole in the center, because I want that to be a hole that I can center for the piece that I want to put on there. So now I can peel this off. I can take off like these excess pieces, as you can see. And what I have left is just a pattern for the shape that I want, and I can extend it out and make it bigger and do some other things with it. So okay, so let me peel that off, and then we're going to use that to cut out my styrene piece that's going to replace this and raise it up a bit. All right, so I removed the tape from this section right here, and I taped it onto a piece of styrene as a template. And I'm using kind of a medium thickness. It's not too thick, but it's not real thin either. It's sturdy enough. And I try to tape it up to an edge so I can conserve as much of this as I can. So I'm using as little as possible so I don't waste a lot of the styrene. And this doesn't have to be the perfect shape. It's going to be sanded and contoured to match what I want it to be, and I might even cut out some extra pieces as well, that kind of thing. So so let me kind of draw around this, see what other parts I'm going to extend out of it, and then we're going to go ahead and get that cut out. And I'm going to use my photo etch snips because it's kind of small, and this is kind of precise, so it's going to work better for me on that. So all right, let's go ahead and work on that there. All right, so I'm ready to go ahead and draw out the hole for this piece here from the X-Wing. And the nice thing about this piece is it has a nice lip right around the edge of it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's a sizable lip. So I'm going to draw out the hole so I can drop it down in from the outside and have it just flush with that. It'll be pretty cool. So I took this piece, I stuck it on to where I wanted it to generally be, and centered it. Let's double check that. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm ready to draw it out, and I have my Dremel here. And the easiest way on this one is just to use my little graduated kind of sanding bit, and I can just start with the tip and drill a hole through and just make it fairly close to the edge of it but it's not exactly round, so I'm just going to do it for most of it, and then I'll use some tools to contour it to be the right shape. So, okay, let's go ahead and get that drilled out. All right, so that's fairly as far out as I want to go, so I can pull off the extra plastic. Use my X-Acto knife to cut that out. Cut off the rough edges. Okay, so it's fairly close. All right, so let me clean that up a little bit more with my my needle file, and this is the one that has a rounded edge profile on one side and a flat on the other. So it's really nice for getting some curved edges in it. And the key to this is just don't overdo it. Don't cut out too much. Cut out less than you need. That way you can hone it into where you need it to be. And just keep testing the part until it fits to where it's supposed to be. And I have the lines on here, so I generally know where I'm aiming for, so that's easy to do. And this one, like I said, it's fairly oval shape, so it's not an exact circle. So I gotta take off some plastic so it's gonna match up to where it needs to be. All right, so I have it sanded out to where I want it to be. And it's just slightly larger than this, so it goes down just a little bit beneath the edge of it and sinks down into it, which is what I want. And I'm going to finish off that edge around it with just some styrene stripping, and I'll show you how I do that as well. So I'm ready to glue this in, but before I do that, in order to make this piece curved instead of flat, since this sphere is curved, I want to use a technique that I use a lot, and that is to take something solid like my X-Acto knife, which is aluminum. It's pretty solid. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to press it along it carefully, because obviously there's a hole there, and this edge I don't want to break it or anything, so I want to just slightly take it around. And all I'm doing is applying some pressure along this aluminum X-Acto knife so it curves it, puts a curve into it. I'm going to do it in both the horizontal and the vertical, because that's how this curve is in the sphere. And it doesn't have to be completely where it needs to be, because I'm going to glue it onto some styrene to give it that, curved shape as well. So, all right, so that's a little better. And then I'm going to do the same thing up and down. And sometimes I'll do it before I drill the hole in, so I'm using a piece of solid styrene, so it's not quite as fragile, but this doesn't have to have a complete curve in it, just a hint of it pretty much. So it's a little more pliable when I glue it onto the side pieces. So there we go. All right, so there's somewhat of a curve into it. Do a little bit more this way. And obviously, when I do it on both sides, they're fighting against each other somewhat, but it brings it to where it needs to be. So it's going to fit that a little bit better. Okay. All right, there we go. So I have somewhat of a curve in that piece. So this piece is going to match up with this section right here. And it's going to be raised up. All right, so I'm ready to go ahead and glue this piece into there. Let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how I'm going to do the stripping around it, so I can finish that edge and it looks a lot better. All right, so I have the nozzle glued in place. Now, just to make sure that it's nice and secure, and I did this off camera, I took some thin round stock and I glued it around the perimeter on the back of it to give it a little more solid hold, so it's not moving around. So I have it just evenly lined up where it's supposed to be. if you can see that angle or not, but it's all flush. So it sticks out a bit. There's a lip, but it's not too prominent. All right, so what I want to do now is to finish off that outer edge. I'm going to use the same round stock, and I'm going to curve it so it's going to fit around there. Excuse me. So I use the same method with the X-Acto knife. Now, first of all, let me just cut off a piece. Well, we'll curve it first because I don't want to cut off too much. But to take a straight round stock like this and curve it around so it doesn't snap or break or look uneven, I do the same thing. I take my X-Acto knife, and be careful because there's a blade on here, of course. So you can use whatever you want. I'm just used to using this, so you know I'm fairly careful with it. So I take it and I just press it down there, and I just curve it around. Okay. And I just hold it in place, and I just keep curving it around, and I hold it down pretty tightly against it. And I just curve it as much as I think I'm probably going to use, and I just hold it there for a few moments. Let it kind of take that curved shape. You want to go a little more than you think you're going to need because you're going to cut it off, and then it's going to all have the right curve all the way through the edges of it. So, all right, so that should about do it. Here we go. And you can see how it's nice and curved now. So when I pull it together, it's going to make a rounded. It's going to make a rounded section. Do I want it to be? So, okay. So I don't need all of this, obviously. But I'm gonna leave it a little bigger than I need to be, so I can start gluing it and then snip it off. All right. So let me see. So that should probably about do it. Hold that in place. Okay. So I'm just gonna snip that off. All right, so I have the piece that I want to use. It's already pre-curved for me. All right, just kind of do it a little bit more. You can just kind of hold it into a rounded section and just kind of bend it a little bit. Just be gentle because you can snap it. You don't want to put too much strain on it or it's going to snap. All right, so I'm using my extra thin quick setting, and then once it's done I'll use the regular glue to seal it in place. Maybe not on the top because I don't want that to mar that surface too much. This stuff's really good because it doesn't leave any real residue that you can see. You can sand it out pretty good and then paint over it and it's not a problem. So what I want to do is I'll probably start at the bottom because once these meet they're going to have a little seam. And I don't want that to be visible, quite as visible. So I'll start right about there. Move it over just a little. Sorry if I can't show you this whole thing here. It's kind of delicate, but okay. So I'm just going to start a little piece. This stuff dries pretty quick. I usually just blow on it, let it start to set. All right, so once I get that little piece, and I want it to be straight, flat against that edge, and I can always sand the profile a bit when I'm done. Okay, just glue it a little bit more. Give it about a minute and it sets pretty good. All right, so once it's anchored in place, then I can slowly start to move this around, and sometimes the glue will use capillary action and start to glue in the rest of it. Just use your X-Acto knife and just kind of cut it free. It's no big deal. And I can sand this surface when I'm done, so it's not really going to hurt much. All right, so don't want to break it away too much because I want it to be anchored. Okay, just so I can then move it down and get kind of as much of a piece as you can get. Like I can do this whole curved side. So hold that in place. Okay. And sometimes it does that. It'll pull loose. Just kind of hold it down again. Alright. Doesn't hurt anything. As long as I get most of it glued in place, I can always glue that end down again. Okay. Just hold that there for a couple seconds. Sorry if you can't see this as closely. It's a bit delicate. There we go. Alright, so I have that pushed back in place. As you can see, it's adhering to the outer edge of that piece. Okay. The more you get glued down, the more solid it is. And obviously it holds better. But you can't do the whole thing at once. You got to do a piece at a time. It's always nice to have a lip or something you can line it up against so you can get a nice snug fit. Okay, so there we go. So we'll get this other end here glued in place. And this is a little less of bad odor than some of the other ones because it dries so quickly, but it still can tend to get to you, so you might want to wear an air mask and some protection. I generally do if I'm doing a lot of gluing. Okay, so there's most of it. All right, now I want to get that last main part, and then we'll seal in the two ends. Okay. There we go. And I want to keep it snug up against that lip. Okay, there we go. All right, so most of it's on there. So now I got to do the last bit, so I want to mark it off with a little felt tip marker. Okay, to where I want to snip it off. I can just use my little photo at snips. And again, you know, don't snip off too much. Try to judge it, but I have to use an X-Acto knife. Okay. Here we go. All right. A little bit more. Okay. All right, perfect. So those last two pieces are going to go together nicely. So I want to be prepared. And the easiest way is to use a emery board because it has a rough surface and I can press these two together. So what I want to do is put some glue on there. You got to move pretty quickly. Press that down. Okay, just hold that in place for a few seconds until it dries. Okay, there you go. And it's pretty quick too, like I said. All right, then I can clean that up with an emery board once it all totally dries. So, all right, and then there's the nozzle glued inside of there and all ready to go. You can see that's going to be raised from the ship. All right, so I will obviously have more detailing on this part, and there'll be sides on it and that sort of thing. So stay tuned to my Borg Discovery build, and you'll see more of this piece. This is what this is for, obviously. All right, well, thank you again to my subscribers, and I will see you next time. Thank you.